It is the biggest week in the history, really, of the world, right? Has there ever been a bigger or more important week than the Cincinnati Bengals going to Los Angeles, California to play in Super Bowl 56? You are in the jungle. My name is Matt Edwards. Thank you so much for joining me this week and or all season long. If you're new here, I know the numbers have been pumping up the closer we get to this game, so welcome aboard or thank you for coming back. Either way, happy to have you in on what has kind of become a slow week all of a sudden. Last week really flew by, sucking in all that Bengals coverage and reliving the win in Kansas City. Now this week, yesterday was Monday. It feels like I should have woke up today and it's been Thursday, but it is not. It is only Tuesday. I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon. It is 12:13 p.m., and we're going to talk about the Bengals going to the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bengals going to the Super Bowl. I'll say it one more time. The Bengals going to the Super Bowl to play the Los Angeles Rams. I can't get enough of it. I said last week it didn't really feel real at the time. And then on Wednesday, so 6 days ago, I went down to Richard's Sporting Goods and got some Super Bowl gear. I dropped $180 on 2 t-shirts and a hoodie, whatever, once in a lifetime thing. And something, I don't know if it was the just feeling it and seeing the physical thing there or what, but something about that made it feel real. And on that 15-minute drive home from Richards, I could not stop smiling. It was amazing. It's been an incredible time. I'm trying to soak it up as much as I can. I've said that with every round of the playoffs. Like after they beat the Raiders, I was like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this week. If they lose in Tennessee, it is what it is. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. And then they got to the AFC Championship, and I was like, you know what? The Chiefs are great. Maybe this isn't the year, but they're clearly on their way. They're going to be in this position for years to come to compete and earn a trip to the Super Bowl. Then they beat the Chiefs, and here I am again. I am just on cloud 9 for the last 5 weeks now. So I hope you are doing the same. Let's get into what is actually going to happen, or some of what I think needs to happen this Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, for the Bengals to finish this thing off and get their first Super Bowl title, their first Lombardi trophy. They flew out to Los Angeles today, by the way, on Tuesday. So good for them to get acclimated to all that. The first thing, one thing, and I've been watching more like national coverage and everything this week than I typically would. I listen to a lot of the local guys and a lot of local podcasts, and I like clicking on what the local guys in Cincinnati do. However, this week, I've been, it's all Bengals all the time on NFL Network or ESPN, ESPN when it's on at the gym. And one thing that has been touched on, but the thing that maybe isn't getting enough talk that I really am leaning on this Sunday is that I trust so much in Lou Anarumo to figure this thing out in the moment. That's the first thing I want to talk about. And I trust the other guys too, but what butters my biscuit for this Bengals team right now is the fact that this defense is making in-game adjustments and has been for a while now. It's not like that thing they did against the Chiefs last week was just kind of a, fluky situation where they saw something and took advantage. They've been a second-half team all year, and here recently, they've been a second-half defensive monster when they come out of the locker room. So for all the firepower this Rams team has, and I still think the Chiefs is a better offense, by the way, but either way, we know the Bengals can handle them. We know that the Bengals can hang with anyone on defense at this point. And the Rams really, sure, they've got it all. They've got Matt Stafford. They've got a great receiving core, maybe the best in the league with Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham. And they've got a solid offensive line, and we'll see what happens with Tyler Higbee. But at any rate, no matter what they put on the field, and not to mention their head coach, who is arguably the best offensive mind in all of football. At the end of the day, you look at what they've done, they're not world beaters on offense. This isn't the greatest show on turf. I mean, look at the NFC Championship alone. They had 7 points going into the fourth quarter against San Francisco. 7 points, a touchdown. Look back against Baltimore. They had 7 points going into the fourth quarter against the Ravens. A team that the Bengals hung 41 points on twice, by the way. And they scored 30 against Tampa Bay. They scored 34 against Arizona. On paper, they're very scary. And in real life, sure, they can be scary. But is there anyone right now who's watched and paid attention to this Bengals team who doesn't think that Anarumo and company and Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader, that defensive line can figure out a way to disrupt what they've got going on, especially in the second half? I mean, if the Bengals hold them to, 17 or less in that first half, is there anyone who isn't confident in what's going to happen in the second half? By the way, I looked this up. Speaking of some of the similarities between these two teams, the Rams and Bengals have scored the exact same amount of points in the regular season. They both ended up averaging 27.1 points per game on offense. The Rams did average 11 more yards per game on offense. But I bring that up because, again, does the Bengals offense get nearly the love that Los Angeles does? Think about that for a second. Think about, the love compared to what Odell Beckham and Cooper Kupp get compared to what the Bengals offense gets. A little bit different, right? And you look over on defense, they're pretty much neck and neck again. The Bengals allowed 22.1 points per game, and the Rams allowed 21.9 points per game. Now, if you're out there listening, you know that I'm typically not someone who sits here and reads stats, but there are so many similarities between these two teams that I'm not quite done yet. It's a very even matchup, and that's why I think, and I know it kind of gets repetitive, but don't turn the ball over. Take advantage when Matthew Stafford throws some crazy balls, which he has a tendency to do, and you're probably going to see black and orange confetti fall at the end of this one. Don't make mistakes. Take advantage when the other team does make a mistake. Don't let the ball bounce off your hands. When the ball comes to you, the San Francisco 49ers are probably playing in this game if they do not drop a pick six from Matt Stafford 2 weeks ago in the NFC Championship. Don't make a mistake. Take advantage. You win the turnover battle. You probably win the game. History tells us that. And right now, we know how well, to go back to what I started with here, we know how well Anarumo's defense is adjusting. Do they see something in that first half, something Stafford's doing, a route that Cooper Kupp pretends he's breaking off but actually doesn't? That could be the difference in the game. Oh, and by the way, speaking of the adjustments, in their 3 postseason games this year, the Bengals have allowed just 1 touchdown in the second half. That, of course, came from A.J. Brown on a spectacular catch in Tennessee. And that was following the Samaje Perine turnover. So, again, the Titans probably don't get back in that game. The Bengals were cooking at that point. The Bengals probably go down and score there. The Titans, it's not even probably a game if the Bengals don't give them the ball right there. It's what it comes down to. And it's not like the sexiest topic to talk about, but it's true. And I know that you're out there listening. You're like, well, I can't do anything about the turnovers. I agree, but it still keeps me up at night. What else? I guess I'm trying to kind of stay away from some major storylines here just because we all know what Joe Burrow can do, right? We all know that he can escape the pocket. He can make plays. I don't need to tell anyone that. It's amazing. I love it. I'll never get tired of seeing it, but we might get tired of hearing it at this point. Actually, that's not true. We don't get tired of hearing it, but we already know it. If you want to hear about that, you can go watch, First Take or whatever. But the other Joe is kind of the one, Joe Mixon, that I think if he can build off of what he did against Kansas City in the second half, where he starts to get some of those chunk plays, that could be the difference in the game. Mo Egger, the best radio sports host, I literally think in America. He's probably my favorite, and I don't think he listens to this, which is fine because he's a busy guy and he has better takes than anyone. But he's probably the smartest guy when it comes to Cincinnati sports, and he's probably my favorite guy to listen to in general. But he kind of brought up the point that when it comes to, like, the Rams are going to pressure Joe Burrow, right? It's all about Joe Burrow not allowing those to come turn into mistakes, turn into turnovers, which he's been very good about recently, and not allowing them to get knocked out of field goal range for Evan McPherson. But Mo kind of brought up that point, and what it made me think of is how important it is for Joe Mixon to get going, because that's kind of what's going to eliminate this pass rush. The Rams can rush the passer, right? There's nothing the Bengals can really do to stop that, but can they slow it down? Sure. How do they slow it down? Well, you got to make Von Miller and Aaron Donald, you've got to make them think, hey, if I'm 4 yards in the backfield before I really realize what's going on, and Joe Mixon's 4 yards past the line of scrimmage before I really realize what's going on, I'm going to have to slow things down a little bit. So if he can rip off And we saw him in the second half. I mean, he made a huge difference in the second half, and give credit to the offensive line as well because they got some great pushes in there. Not going to be as easy against Aaron Donald. I understand that, but this is a Super Bowl. No one's making any excuses at this point. And Mixon, to go back to Mixon by himself, little indecisive against both Tennessee and in the first half against Kansas City. There were some times where it felt like he could have got 6 or 7 yards, but instead tried to cut it back and hit a home run. I don't really know what he was trying to do, but he didn't look like himself at times. And in the second half, it's kind of like, and maybe someone got in his ear, I don't know, but he got back to, I see a hole, I hit it, and we know what ended up happening there. But if he can do that, give me 6-7 yards or carry and you're going to be in good shape. But B, that keeps the pass rush off Joe Burrow. Those two things work in tandem. When Joe Burrow has time in the pocket, you know what happens. Good things happen. He's been phenomenal this postseason and this whole season fleeing for his life. So what's it going to be like if they can give him, that was the thing against Kansas City. If he got 3 seconds, it was a completion. And not like a dump off. It was between 8 and 25 yards. If you can get Joe Mixon going and give Joe Burrow that extra time, that could literally be the difference in the game. Those two things work in tandem. It could be a beautiful thing. For the Bengals to win, I think we need to see Joe Mixon break off some big runs. It's as simple as that. And that said, I think myself and everyone this postseason has said, hey, here's what the Bengals need to do to win. And they maybe haven't done that and have still won. Evan McPherson's kicked 4 field goals every game. Going into Tennessee, we said, well, you can't just kick field goals and win. Well, they kicked 4 field goals and won. Same thing against Kansas City, right? So maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think that Joe Mixon, what we saw in the second half, him getting upfield, dude, just hit the hole. You're great. You're an excellent running back. You don't have the best offensive line. So when it's there, you've got to take it, and that can open up this entire offense. Joe Burrow can be Superman when he needs to be. We all know what he can do when he's comfortable. But in order to allow him to get comfortable, I think Joe Mixon, and obviously the offensive line is a big factor in that, but I've got a lot of faith in Joe Mixon. When you've got the opportunity, you've got to strike. The offensive line, don't quite have as much faith in, and, that's nothing against them. It is what it is. The Bengals kind of lack that depth there, and when Riley Reif gets hurt, and your right guard position isn't quite what you want it to be. They've had 3 guys in there this year. Xavier Su'a-Filo got hurt. I don't know that he would have been any better than Akeem Adeniji or Jackson Carman, but it is what it is. That's the weak spot on the offensive line. They've overcame it so far. I think they can overcome it again, but you're going to need some help in the forms of chips, from tight ends, from running backs, and in the form of Joe Mixon making those guys look up and see the back of number 28 running downfield a few times. Cool? I'll try to slow it down a little bit here. The third thing I have written down here, and I've thought about this a lot, because there's a part of me that says this is like a really low-hanging fruit take. This is a very common take. But at the same time, if I take off the black and orange glasses and I try to look at this game as just two teams I have a neutral feeling against, there are times when you just say, you know what, that team's hot right now. They're in the zone right now. They're playing with swag right now. And they find ways to win. No matter what, they find a way to win. And if you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, they went on the road to play the 1 seed. First ever road playoff game for a lot of this team, the quarterback in particular. Right? Really all those guys. They're so young. None of them had played in a playoff game in the NFL, let alone a road playoff game. But they go on the road to the number 1 seed, who just had a week off. They gave up 9 sacks and still won the game. Next week, they fall behind 21-3 on the road to the 2-time defending AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs, and they won the game. The Bengals were 7-6 1 week before Christmas. They trailed Denver in the third quarter on the road, and a loss probably railroads their season. They probably end up as a wild card. Who knows what happens from there? But they won the stinking game. They're just a team that's never out of it. Even in some of their losses, they were down 14 to San Francisco, come back and take it to overtime. They were down twice to Kansas City. This was a win in Week 17. They were down twice by 14, won the game. They trailed 24-0 to the Los Angeles Chargers, cut it to 24-22. Again, this is a loss, but they always find ways to put themselves in position to have a shot to win the game. And maybe because of that, and the Rams kind of seem to do the same thing, by the way, maybe because of that, this comes down to the last team to have the ball. You can say the same thing for the Rams. They've won 8 of their last 9. The Bengals have won 7 of 6. Both teams are 8-4 in their last 12. It might come down to who has the ball last. And for the record, sometimes having the ball last leads to a touchdown. Sometimes it leads to a turnover. One of these quarterbacks is a little more prone to turn the ball over than the other. He wears number 9, and his name is the same as mine, Matthew Stafford. That's not my last name, but you get the point. So, it's just, is it the most logical take? I don't know. But sometimes there are teams who get hot at the right time, find ways to win, and the Bengals are that team, especially this second half of the season. And I said that if you want to go back and listen before the season, that's why I like the Bengals to make the playoffs this year. Obviously, I picked them to go 9-8. I was a little off there. I don't think anyone could have truly believed that we would see this. But at any rate, you needed the Bengals to do 2 things: stay healthy and really start gel in the second half of the year, and they've done both of those things. Does that lead to them winning? Who knows? This game might come down to 2 or 3 plays. It could very well be 20-20 with 2:35 to go, and whoever scored last and has given the ball away is going to be on the wrong end of it. Or the right end of it. We'll find out. That's the fun of it, right? Before rapid fire, a little fun bunch of info from Good Morning Football the other day that kind of goes along the lines of the theme of this podcast. Both the Bengals and the Rams have been the 4 seed here. They have both scored 460 regular season points, both 8-4 in their last 12, and both won their last 2 playoff games by a field goal. I saw that tweet from Good Morning Football. I thought it just put a nice little bow on A, me trying to be kind of balanced here, and B, just the fact that this truly is. I mean, the Rams seem like such a favorite if you get outside of Cincinnati, or listen and /read outside of Cincinnati. I don't know. I think if these 2 teams play each other 10 times, it's probably 5 wins for each team. By the way, there was another comparison that I'm not going to go into about how Joe Burrow and Tom Brady both won their first playoff game against the Raiders, both made the Super Bowl against the Rams in their second season, both 20 years apart. Not going to get into that, though, right? Way too early for that sort of talk. But, you know, kind of neat. All right, rapid fire. This is going to be a little different. I'm just going to go through some things and go off the top of my head. And the one thing I wanted to talk about first, common opponents. This kind of stood out to me. The Bengals and Rams had 8 common opponents this year. Thanks in part, they both played the NFC North. That said, I was excited when I realized it was 8 teams. I dug into it a little bit. I don't think there's a lot you can learn. They both lost to the Packers, both lost to San Francisco in the regular season. Obviously, the Rams beat them in the NFC Championship. The Bengals beat the Titans. The Rams did not, but the Bengals did that 2 weeks ago. The Rams lost to them in like November, I think. And the Rams beat the Bears. The Bengals did not in week 2. And that was another game. Talking about the Bengals never being out of it. I mean, Joe Burrow throws interceptions on 3 straight plays, including a pick 6 in that third quarter, and the Bengals still almost come back to win that game. They lose 20-17 in one of the more encouraging losses you will ever see in Bengaldom, because the way it went, I mean, the fact that they still had a shot at the end was remarkable. They both beat the Lions, both beat the Jags, both beat the Vikings. Nothing too impressive there. That's what you would expect out of 2 teams headed to the Super Bowl. The one team that they both played that maybe you can take something from, especially because they both played them in December, actually the Rams played them in January, would be the Baltimore Ravens. The Rams needed 13 points in the fourth quarter to win that game 20-19. The Bengals laid the hammer down both times, scoring 41 both times they played Baltimore and beating them by double digits both times. What can you take from that? I don't know, and I don't have the time to sit there and break down the film. I do know the Ravens were kind of in a do-or-die position, and this is the NFL. There's not that much of a gap between teams in general, especially keep in mind Baltimore didn't have Lamar Jackson. They had Tyler Huntley instead. But that's the one common opponent that you kind of look at and say, If this is a barometer, it looks good for the Bengals. Is it a barometer? I don't know. I just found it interesting. CJ Uzomah last night at the Bengals big-time fan pep rally said he is going to play like a WWF superstar. He ripped off his knee brace and threw it to midfield. WWE, excuse me. Really aging myself with that one. I'm not sure people outside of Cincinnati realize what a factor CJ Uzomah is. I don't want to call him Joe Burrow's security blanket, because I don't think it's not that I don't think, I know Joe Burrow doesn't need a security blanket, but he's there. He's always there on those underneath routes. He's got a big body, kind of later in his career now. I mean, he's really a guy who has taken his time to develop into this excellent tight end that we know right now. And he's really developed into a guy who feels almost like he's boxing out like a rebounder, like a basketball player, like we've seen so many great tight ends do over the years. And I mean, you look at some of the games this year. I mean, he's great with yards after the catch. The 2 touchdowns in primetime against the Jaguars. Against Baltimore, he just kind of obliterated that secondary for a long touchdown run. He's a guy who plays with the heart of a stinking lion. If he's out there, it makes a big difference. And I don't know. I think probably most of the people listening realize that. But outside of Cincinnati, I mean, he's really just kind of had his breakout year this year, which is unusual because it's like his 6th or 7th year. I don't know. He's been there for a while, but it's a big deal if he can get out there. The closer to 100%, the better, obviously. And if nothing else, I can assure you that the Rams understand what a threat he is, and that will change the way they approach him compared to if Drew Sample were out there. Something else I just had to touch on, right offensive line, the right side of the offensive line. If anyone talks to them, please just tell them to be decent. They don't have to be great. I don't expect them to be great. It's tough to be great against this defensive line. But you have just got to be like, I don't know, what would be fair? Like the 17th or 18th best right side of the line in foot? Can you just be like slightly below middle of the pack and good things will happen? I really think if somehow you could plug in like 2, and they don't have to be all pros, right? You don't have to give me whoever's great over there on that side. You don't have to give me Tristan Wirfs. You don't have to give me the Browns offensive line. You just have to give me a couple guys who are like 12th or 10th, and I would be all in on the Bengals being in great shape. That's really the only thing that worries me is, Joe Burrow's been quite the escape artist recently. How long can you keep that up realistically? Even the great runners in football. I mean, Lamar Jackson last year got shut down in the playoffs running. Even the best running quarterbacks, and Joe's been a good one, eventually they meet their match. Teams catch up to it. So, right side, just be okay. That's all I'm asking. I might have said this already. The Bengals went 7-0 against AFC playoff teams this year. They beat the Chiefs twice. They beat the Raiders twice. They beat the Steelers twice. And, of course, they beat the Titans. Now, 3 of those games, obviously, coming in the postseason. Just another interesting fact that I think, the Bengals aren't some Cinderella team. They deserve to be here. Now, they lost to the 2 NFC playoff teams they played in the 49ers and the Packers. Both in overtime. Both probably or potentially wins if not for some special teams miscues. It is what it is. That's part of the game. But it's just kind of wild. The Bengals are still kind of getting this, and I don't care. I love it. I'm all for it. Tell them they're the underdogs. Tell Joe Burrow all day that him and his team aren't ready for this stage. I love it. But it's kind of wild to me that they're getting treated like this Cinderella story. This is a good team that's beat other good teams. Their only real losses, the only loss that they have against teams you could even argue were in their same category was against the Chargers. And probably the second best team they lost to was the Browns. Other than that, the only thing that stops the Bengals is the Bengals. When they, don't show up properly against the Bears, when they let Mike White, who just kind of had one of those fluky all-time games for the Jets, beat them. Those are the kind of things that happen when they lose. If the Bengals show up, when the Bengals show up, let me double check here, but I don't think when they properly showed up, I think the only game you can argue they lost this year, and they lost, 7 games. But the only game you can say they didn't beat themselves, probably the Packers and the Chargers in that Browns game. Right? And even the Packers game, Evan McPherson had just the worst game of his young career where he doesn't typically miss, and they probably win it. And again, the homer in me coming out a little bit here. And we don't need to focus on games played in October, but a big gust of wind out of nowhere. You remember Evan McPherson kind of celebrating before it went in because a crazy gust of wind pushes his kick. The Bengals end up losing in overtime instead of winning in overtime. But that's besides the point. By the way, The Lead, which is the podcast The Athletic does, had a really cool story with Jay Morrison the other day about Evan McPherson's upbringing. You should check that out. He played varsity football for 5 years. How? They'll tell you on The Lead. How about a tease for that? Shout out to The Athletic and all the local folks doing great work this week, although I don't know if The Athletic is considered local. Anyways, Bengals are a good team. They're not here by mistake. And I think most people realize that now, but still, I kind of expected them to get a little more love this week, and I don't care that they're not. Just kind of surprising. Fine with me. Keep telling them they won't win. Ticket prices. I have been looking at Super Bowl tickets. I intend to buy a Super Bowl ticket. I will buy a Super Bowl ticket. They have dropped about $1,200 since 8 days ago, the day after the AFC Championship. So they're down about $1,200. The cheapest I saw the day after the AFC title game was about $5,500. As of Tuesday morning, the cheapest I saw, and this is before the ridiculous and should be illegal fees, was $4,250. So they're going down. Not a lot. They're still absurd. I think the average ticket price for Super Bowl 53 was $2,500, and that's kind of what I'd hoped I would be paying this year. But it looks like it's going to be a little closer to $3,000 or $4,000. Hopefully they continue to go down over the week. I haven't done pet peeves on here in a while, but one struck me the other day. People who argue over better kinds of beer. I was at a wedding, and it was a fantastic wedding, but I just heard these two dudes argue. One was drinking a Bud Light, one was drinking the Miller Lite, and they were making fun of each other as if one were superior to the other. Stop doing this. You sound like such a dork when you do this. Like, oh, you're drinking water. Oh, you're drinking goat urine. Stop it. No one cares. Even if you're drinking like some sophisticated IPA, you're actually worse if you're that guy. You're just telling on yourself for being an absolute dork if you're like, well, I'm drinking a real beer. Stop doing that. Beer is beer. We're drinking it because it loosens us up and makes us feel good. No chick's ever been like, ooh, is he drinking a Imperial IPA? How about him? No, don't do that anymore. It's weird. And it's lame. Argue about something different, like the Bengals and the Browns who beat them twice. I don't care. Just do something better. I was in Cleveland, which makes me bring that up. Anyways, that's that. On to the next thing. My kind of fun fact of this podcast, Kevin Huber plus 50,000 to win Super Bowl MVP. Bengals punter Kevin Huber. How wonderful would that be? If any Bengals player wins the MVP, that'd be cool. But if Huber won it, I mean, what's he going to do? Like pin him inside the 5-7 times? Hopefully the Bengals don't punt 7 times. However, if you were to make that bet and Kevin Huber out of McNick High School were to win that, $10 would win you $5,000. $100 would win you $50,000. And if you're good at math, you know by now $1,000. If Kevin Huber won the MVP and you place that bet, would win you $500,000. So this will be my first year not betting on the Super Bowl. I bet on it. I mean, in my adult life anyways, I bet on it every year. If you listen to this podcast, you probably know I do not bet on the Bengals. I really only bet on games to give me a rooting interest, and I don't need it when it comes to Cincinnati. By the way, Matthew Stafford, the Super Bowl MVP favorite at plus 125, meaning a $10 bet would win you $12.50. He is followed by Joseph Lee Burrow at plus 235, meaning a $10 bet would win you $23.50. After that, the favorite, if you can guess it, who is not a quarterback, take a guess. You probably know. Not Jamar, it's Cooper Kupp, followed by Aaron Donald, and then Uno, the one and only Jamar Chase. If you like long shots, and it's a long shot for a reason, it's probably going to be the winning quarterback, but the guy I like as a long shot with some real value would be Jesse Bates, the Bengals safety, at plus 30,000. Plus 30,000. He's a ball hawk, right? The Rams like to air it out. Let's say he gets 2 interceptions in this game. Let's say those 2 interceptions lead to 10 Bengals points, and the Bengals end up with like a 16-13 win. Very good chance that in that situation, if the winning score is 16 and a defensive back has 2 interceptions that lead to 10 points, that guy's going to get some serious consideration for MVP. Now, is that Is that a likely scenario? Sure, no. But it's not the farthest fetch scenario either. I don't know if that's proper English, farthest fetch. You get what I'm saying. It's not the craziest thing that could potentially happen. And a $10 bet in that scenario wins you $3,000. I was looking and I said, who's a long shot I like here? Who's like plus 20,000 or more that I like? And Jesse Bates makes a lot of sense to me. And then finally, one fun aspect of this Super Bowl, and we won't be able to answer it until after the game, but what are the tendencies that Zach Taylor knows about Sean McVay? I mean, it was, 4 years ago that he was a quarterback coach in Los Angeles in the Super Bowl, only scoring 3 points against New England? How much does that affect the game? And also, how much does McVay try to use this to his advantage and or try to make adjustments to throw Zach Taylor off? It's one of those classic game within the game scenarios, but it's one that doesn't happen very often. I mean, Zach Taylor's got to know Sean McVay pretty well, the quarterback's coach and the offensive guru head coach who work together in Los Angeles. So it'll be cool. And if you're the Rams and McVay, and who knows, I'm sure maybe he'll get asked this, you could argue because of this, because of Zach Taylor knowing Sean McVay so well, the Bengals might have been the team you least wanted to see come out of the AFC. I guess it depends on how much Sean McVay likes to adjust and how married he still is to the concepts he had 4 years ago. So, it's just a fun little factoid for all you people out there. All right, that's going to be it for me. I'm going to have another episode come out on Friday before I fly to LA on Saturday morning. So, tune in for that one. Just predictions and what. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I got a lot to say. Make sure you're following all the people out there. Our friend Jared Smalley is out there for a full week from Columbus. If you're in the Columbus area, he's got great reports every night on NBC4, along with their Olympic coverage from Beijing. So my old pals that I interned for across the world doing cool things while I'm sitting here in my pajamas recording a podcast. And then, of course, my guy George Vogel from Channel 5 is out there. Jeremy Rao from Fox 19 is out there. The guys from The Athletic, who I love to read, are out there, even though I don't actually know them. Support the local stuff. It's cool to turn on NFL Network. Do that too. Soak it up. Do whatever makes you happy. But keep in mind there's a lot of good local guys out there and local women as well who are delivering good content. And it's cool. They've always got the better beat. They've been following this team for all 20 games, right? So they're a little more tuned in than what you might hear Michael Irvin say or, Willie McGinnis or David Carr or Rich Eisen. And I like all those guys too. But they've been talking about the Cowboys and Tom Brady all year. These local people, they put in the work, baby. They were there for the 2-14 season, and here they are a couple years later for the Super Bowl season. All right? Okay, later this week I'll have a show with predictions, and I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be fun. Enjoy this week. Enjoy yourselves. Go Bengals. What an amazing time to be alive. The show is In the Jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. I'm at Matt Edwards, MattEdwards, on Twitter.com if you want to follow along there. It'll be fun. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked it, send it to a friend. We'll see you later this week as we talk about the Super Bowl, because that's the game the Cincinnati Bengals are playing in. Playing in February for the first time ever. It's In the Jungle. We'll see you soon.